Hey guys, so ADD is exceptionally prevalent in today's society. It seems like 30% of the kids now are medicated for it in their school systems, and it's getting out of hand, and it's getting out of hand rapidly. What a lot of people don't know is really what causes it. There's a lot of old wives' tales or theories now of parents saying that kids aren't getting out and getting to play, and there's some levels of misdiagnosis. And in some cases, that can be true. It's kind of like a dog that's pent up. They're going to be more likely to act out if they aren't able to run around and play. And our school system does kind of keep kids confined, although they're trying to get them out with recess and do other things. But that's not the biggest issue, for sure. There are kids now that are like, oh my gosh, I don't care what you say, this kid is ADHD to the max. And there's different types of ADHD. There's type 1 and type 2. Basically, the difference between the two is one is where they're more towards the hyperactivity side, and then the other one is that they're more just, they space. They may not even have symptoms of hyperactivity at all, and you would be like, oh, that kid has ADD or ADHD. And that's because there's two different types. One is an inattentive, and one is a hyperactivity type. And then there's another where they're both. So when we're looking at these kids, what most people and parents that have kids with ADHD, sometimes y'all are out there researching, and sometimes you guys just kind of you're told one thing through your psychologist or the pediatrician who's ever giving out these medications, that hey, this is just the way it is, that their brain is it needs a stimulant to actually calm them down, and that's either in the form of Ritalin or Adderall is a very common one. I think there's several others out there that people are starting to switch to and play with. They all basically do the same thing. It's acting as a stimulant, which is crazy that we're literally giving our kids the equivalent to it's like a Schedule 1 narcotic, or not narcotic. Sorry, a little bit late, but it's a very serious drug, and it is a Schedule 1 drug, not a narcotic. And this is a huge issue that we're walking around with in our society. These kids are over-medicated. So how does this work? This works because the brain, as it's developing, is literally starting to imbalance itself. The brain, when you're born, it doesn't form fully. People don't realize that. They think that, okay, well, maybe you're just born and your brain does its thing. Nope. Movement and outside stimulation literally goes in through reflexes, and it starts to build the brain. Your brain is built by your environment and the movements that you have and the reflexes that you have when you're born. At some point, movement just takes over and the reflexes go away. A lot of times, these ADHD kids, they are not getting the proper information from the reflexes or from their body going up to literally build their brain sequentially. And so one side or one hemisphere of the brain, your left or your right side of your brain, will start to get more information than it's ordinarily supposed to. And even your brainstem can start to get information outside of the normal information that it's supposed to get. When this bad transfer of information continues, it can literally build one half of your brain to be at a much higher functioning rate than the other side. And the brain, and just like in life, needs balance. So your brain needs to be balanced from your left to your right, and the information that it passes back and forth to one another, to each side. And that comes from having proper stimulation from both sides of the body, both hemispheres of the body, and all the sensory processing that equates to. Which is not surprising why ADHD kids are also usually looped in with other developmental disorders. Autism is another one. And there is what they call a cortical desynchronization, meaning that the brain is not able to synchronize itself accordingly. And so a lot of times these ADHD kids can also be very clumsy, and that's because they're not able to coordinate their body. So what ends up happening is they start to twitch around like crazy because they're trying to provide stimulation for their brain. Like if they're not getting enough of it, so they're twitching, they're fidgeting because they don't have the motor control of their prefrontal cortex to literally inhibit the movements that the front of the brain is trying to create. All of this basically equates to a kid who has ADHD symptoms. And it's not something that is a medicine problem. It's not a lack of a stimulant in their body. That is just doing it's the best that medicine can do to try to put a patch over this issue to get kids to be able to function and behave without having to be all jittery. So it's really just kind of like acting as a stimulant to put the nerves and the neurons at threshold so that they don't have to move and twitch in order to make that happen. We're artificially allowing them to twitch internally. So it's not really solving the issue. What we do in our office, and there's great results with it. I mean, there's no such thing as a quick fix for anything. What we do is we actually start getting kids adjusted. The way we adjust kids is there's no popping, twisting, or cracking with a technique that we use, but we start to realign the communication between the body, the signals that the body is trying to give the brain. Because if those pathways are not clear and they're not able to send the messages from the body up to the brain, it's going to be built abnormally. So we want to make sure that there's that clear passageway, not only from the brain to control the body, but the body to control the brain. And what that does is that balances out the information that the brain is receiving. And that takes time to rebuild and to process. So once they're starting to get proper information, their brain can go from being out of balance to, over time, getting more and more and more balanced information. And that is when people start noticing the changes in their kids. That they're becoming more attentive in class. They're not acting out. They're sitting. They start to behave better. Because honestly, a lot of these kids, they don't want to misbehave. They just can't not misbehave because you're asking them to do something that their body is like. It's like asking someone with Tourette's to not jerk. And that's the same thing with ADHD, except it's just because you're living with them all the time, it's very annoying. And you're just like, oh my God, just listen and behave. And it's tough because they can't. And they can't because their body is disconnected. So what we do is we help to reconnect your kid's brain to their body, just like we do with everybody else. And that's basically the crux of what we do with neurologically based chiropractic. But when you explain it through how the brain balances out, most people have never heard of that. They don't understand how it works. This literally is the cutting edge of clinical psychology today and clinical neuroscience. It's not even really hitting it into the psychology world yet because they're not even using this information, and it's not new research. It's just disjointed and people aren't really hearing about this information. Bottom line, when you bring your kids in, you start getting them adjusted, their brain will begin over time to balance out. Their behavior changes. We can get them off of the medicine, which is very, very dangerous to be on, and now they can actually start to thrive. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'll have to look back. It might actually be a Schedule I narcotic. So I might have caught myself saying that and then realized that no, it actually is. That's why I'm saying it. It's just crazy because I have a hard time fathoming that 20 to 30% of our school kids are being put on these heavy medicines that are more or less banned and outlawed and controlled substances, but it's happening. In fact, the school nurses now are actually more like drug dealers than they are fixing owies and boo-boos. That's the way our society is going right now because we are reactive, trusting everything in medicine, thinking that they have all the solutions and answers, and then they want people who actually have answers to do medicine and give them that. And that's not what we do in our office. We actually allow your body to heal from the inside out. We give you solutions, which are very, very simple, which is start getting adjusted, get adjusted regularly. We'll check, we'll analyze, we'll go through all of that so you can make sense and you can trust in the process. But that's what you have to do. You have to get these kids adjusted as soon as possible. The sooner you can, the sooner that they can start to learn and catch up to their grade levels. The longer it goes with that disconnect and the imbalance, the harder it is for them to catch up in school because, hey, you fix the problem and now they can't relearn 4 or 5 grade levels of material over the course of a year. They're going to be behind, and that's okay. It's better to fix it and then be behind than to never be fixed and stay behind. So that's my 2 cents, and I really, really, really want want you guys to, if you have an ADHD kiddo, we could do things about it. Don't feel resigned to just having to stick with the drugs. You can fix this, and this is something that can be resolved because your body can heal. It's meant to work perfectly, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. This is Dr. Lee Horine with Ignite Chiropractic.